Welcome to Parenting GPS, navigating your parenting journey. I'm Kari, Kling, the host of your show. One of the things that has changed, maybe more than anything, since I was a teenager, was figuring out how to get a job, communicating with people, what it means to have people skills, because things are different now due to technology. And our guest today, Kirt Manecke, is going to give us so many resources and strategies and content about how we can help our teenagers, and I believe even younger than teens, ways that they can learn those people skills, and really, really focus on them so that they can be successful in their lives, in work, in school, and generally in their entire lives, as I said. And I'd like to introduce him to you now. Kirt Manecke is the author of the award-winning Social and Career Skills Crash Course book, ebook, audiobook, and online course, Smile and Succeed for Teens, Must-Know People Skills for Today's Wired World. Kirt is a business owner, sales, marketing, and fundraising expert, and passionate volunteer. His books include The Parent's Guide for Smile and Succeed for Teens, Teaching Guide for Smile and Succeed for Teens, and the award-winning Smile, Sell More with Amazing Customer Service, the Essential 60-Minute Crash Course. Kirt, thank you for being my guest this week on the show.
You're welcome, Kari. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my goodness, when I read your book, I just knew that this would be so helpful to so many families. And so I'd like to begin by just asking you, what is a little bit more about how your background made you want to write this book? How did this come to be?
Well, thank you again for having me. Right out of college, I started a startup specialty retail business. And I knew because it was a startup, we had to offer excellent customer service. I would want to do that anyways. I mean, it's just common courtesy. We
Right.
couldn't afford to lose a single customer because we had a competitor across the street, down the street. They had all the major lines tied up. So it was tough. And I had mainly teenagers working for me. So I created a 6-week training program to give them confidence and the skills they needed to answer questions from customers and treat them properly before they would be allowed to work in the business. Well, years later, I recognized that a lot of companies maybe weren't offering that level of customer service. So I wrote my first book, Smile, Sell More with Amazing Customer Service. But then all these teachers and moms came up to me and they said, you have to get this book in the schools. It's all the people skills kids aren't learning. And I said, I don't know anything about the schools. I wrote this for business. So, make a long story short, I decided then to write the book we're talking about today, Smile and Succeed for Teens, based on my first book, but with the addition of illustrations, with educational captions, and a chapter on volunteering and a chapter on how to interview and get a job. So that's how it came to be.
It's awesome. And
Thank
not
you.
only did you write the book, you didn't just sit down and say to yourself, well, what would teens want to know? You shared with me that you met with teens for months and months to talk with them about their experiences and what would be helpful. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. For 9 months, I met with a wonderful group of teenagers with my manuscript, and I told them, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Tell me what you don't like and add in what you'd like to see. And they added a lot of interesting tips. For instance, one teenager told me, you better tell people not to chew gum, when they're in an interview. And I said, would they ever do that? And he said, yeah, my friend does it all the time. So it's just, it's funny what you learn. And the main reason I met with the teenagers was to make sure that they would read it. And that's the differentiator. It's really quick and easy to read. There's no wasted words. And most teens, when I kind of did an informal survey with them and asked them why they would read it, I said, would you read this? And they'd say yes. And I said, well, why? Well, because it's short and it's got information I need to know. Those were the common answers.
And I've read your book, and I'm not a teenager, but I would agree with what you just said. And
Thank you.
you start out by talking. Well, first of all, you talk about the importance of a smile, And I have to tell you, somebody said to me years and years ago, I'm pretty, smiley, a smiley person. And so if I wasn't, people would say, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" And I would say, "What do you mean? I'm fine." And they would say, "'Cause you're usually smiling and you're not smiling. So that probably means that something's not okay." But I think that carries over when we see people not smiling. Maybe we wonder, are they okay? Are they not being warm and friendly? What are your thoughts about that?
I totally agree with you. And I'm the same way, actually. Friends used to ask me that too if I wasn't smiling. I think you and I have similar personalities. Yes, a smile, it's got so many benefits. It's welcoming. It helps you create that first impression. And like Will Rogers said, that famous quote, you never get a chance to make a good, you never get a second chance to make a good first impression. So if they did a smile study years ago, and it showed that in sales, a smile leads to more sales. So it's important on many levels, and mainly I feel like it's important to make new friends, to make customers feel welcome, and to make that great first impression that Will Rogers talks about, whether your teen is at a job interview or greeting customers or just making friends or volunteering. So it sets the foundation for success, because if you walk in a business and somebody's not smiling, they don't greet you properly, and I've done this, you probably are thinking in your head, boy, do I really want to buy something here? I can easily go online and do it. And I've done that before.
Yeah, and even just feeling appreciated, like you said about
Yes,
friendship, feeling, gosh, this person appreciates what I did for them or tried to do for them, or even just saying hello and trying to make their day happier.
exactly.
Exactly. And so one of your very first chapters is about the top 10 people skills for teens. And so I'd like to ask you, we don't have time to go into depth on all of them, but would you please share with our viewers what are those skills, and then a little bit about maybe, two or three of them.
Sure. And I put the top 10 in both of my books because I thought if people don't read anything else, if they get the top 10 out of it, they'll be far ahead of the pack. And for teens, in both books, I actually put smile and say hello as the very first of the top 10, because if you can do that, whether you're working at Burger King or the teen is working at a dentist office, if you smile and say hi to that customer when they walk in versus ignoring them and maybe looking down and doing paperwork, like you said, they feel appreciated and it's welcoming. So my first tip is smile and say hello. And the reason that's important is a lot of teenagers, they don't have the confidence to do that. Maybe they're on their phones. So we want to help them be comfortable greeting that customer or greeting that volunteer or greeting that friend with a friendly smile, good eye contact, and a friendly hello. So that's number one. The second one is make good eye contact. The third one is turn off the electronics. And I think a lot of teens and tweens nowadays and younger, maybe they've never been told, what are the guidelines? When is it okay to have my phone on when I'm alone? Things like that. And when should I turn it off? Maybe when you're at church, when you're at dinner with your family, when you're in a conversation with somebody. And certainly it should be off when you're working.
And you know
Saying
what,
please.
Kurt, I,
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
want to just interject if I may.
Sure.
I have observed, and at one point my own children were involved in this when they were younger. We stopped it, but there would be kids sitting in the same room on the same couch texting each other instead of having a conversation, and they're right in the same room. It just became the norm, you know.
That's a great story. There, unfortunately, that seems to be the norm these days, and that's why I want teens to learn that. When you're having a conversation with somebody or when you're in the same room, just put that phone away. And we have to make them comfortable talking with each other and socializing. The next one after turn off the electronics is say please and thank you. And again, this is respect for that person, common courtesy if they're at work. It's just showing that customer the utmost of common courtesy and manners so they come back. Asking the customer, could I please have your credit card? And when they buy something, saying thank you. And when the customer says thank you, knowing to say you're welcome and knowing not to say yep or no problem.
And it's so basic, but yet for so many teenagers and even younger than that, it's just not a natural thing for so many kids.
It's not. My book is a fourth grade reading level, and that doesn't mean that we dumbed it down. It simply means we made sure the words were really easy for quick reading so the brain can process it. So the teen doesn't have to work too hard, or the tween. And,
Right.
these are, like you said, basics that kids should learn, but we've kind of lost some of them with the cell phones. The next one is shake hands firmly. And then we have introduce yourself, make a friend, and then pay attention, which is listening, be enthusiastic, ask questions, and the last one is practice proper body language. So they're all important, but if a team just reads the top 10 and does those, they'll be way ahead of the pack.
Right, reads them and practices
And
them
practice,
to
exactly, put them into
apply
action.
them. And obviously the last few you just went over briefly, but you go into much more detail in your book. And so once teens, and again, I believe it's applicable for kids younger, maybe not to get a job, but just common courtesy and how you react to people. Then you have another part about, well, how do you use this in your real life? And when we come back from our break, we're going to dive right into that. We'll be right back. Once again, I believe that the skills that you talk about that are so important in your book are important for all children, not only teens trying to get a job and keep a job. But since that's the focus of the book, let's go ahead and talk about that now. You have an entire section on helping teens learn what to do to be able to get a job. And I'd like to ask you to elaborate on that for us now, please.
Certainly. Some of the things teens can do, let me give you a couple tips when they do have the job. Arrive early, always, that which means always be on time. Ask the employer, what else can I be doing when it's slow? Because there's all, what do they say? If you're leaning, you should be cleaning. There's that little saying they always say. Treat the business like it's your own business, and treat people with respect. And that's what you learn in my book. If the teens, when they have the job, can learn to treat their coworkers and customers with the utmost of respect and have the kind of service I talk about in the book, that employer is always going to be happy. Now, as far as getting that job,
Mhm.
learning how to doing some role playing on job interview skills, I think, is really important. Role playing on common questions that might be asked, like, why do you want to work here? They should definitely research the company before they go. Online, it's easy to look up the company, look up the person who owns it, who they're
Right.
interviewing with, find out some information so that when the person asks them, what do you know about our company? They just don't say, I don't know. And also, um, be prepared, excuse me, and comfortable making a firm handshake, eye contact, welcoming smile. So nice to meet you, Mrs. Smith. Just that first impression with that person interviewing, and just being comfortable interviewing and knowing when the interview is done to mail, not email. They can also email, but mail that thank you letter that same day, because I can tell you this, most teens are not going to do that. That will give your teen a leg up. But I think having these types of good social skills before they go interview and apply for the job is huge. Even if they ask for an application, being dressed professionally for the interview and being dressed professionally when they walk in the business to ask for the application, and asking with good people skills, a nice smile. Can I please have a job application? I'd love to work here. That might be the owner. People used to do that to me when I was the owner. They'd ask for a job application. If the teen was polite and outgoing, I'd ask, can you interview right now?
Yeah.
Because it's hard to find teens with good social skills.
Right. Well, and we talked about this before we started recording also, Kirt. A lot of young adults, not just teens, but men and women in their late 20s, early 30s. My husband has been in the same business for over 30 something years. And he shares with me how some of the young people coming in, if they have questions to ask of their coworkers or their boss, they text it, and it's not a natural thing to have a conversation. So again, it's those communication skills that you started to talk about at the beginning. And so once hopefully the team gets the job, what are some things that you recommend to talk about in terms of keeping that job?
Well, keeping the job is so important. Like I said, being on time, dressing professionally, asking that employer, like I said, what else can we be doing? Going the extra mile for customers, going the extra mile for the employer. If they've been given a task to do, make sure they do it correctly and make sure they go the extra mile and do a little bit more. If they're waiting on a customer and the customer asks, maybe they're at a restaurant, maybe they're a waitress. Do you have gluten-free food? Now, how many times have you had somebody say, I don't know,
Yeah.
with a question? No, you know what? I don't know, but let me go find out. Go the extra mile for that customer, and they will keep that job, and that employer will be super, super happy because of it. And go with a positive attitude. Go with your great social skills. Get along with the coworkers. Learn to respect other people, and learn how to introduce yourself to people at work so that they're comfortable and you're a good team player. That's what employers are looking for also. Will this person get along with my employees, or is this going to be one more nightmare I have to deal with as a business owner? So those are
Well,
some just quick tips to keep that job.
well said. And again, to people that maybe are our age, they might be hearing all of this and say, well, that's just common sense. Of course you would do all of those things, but it is not second nature to so many young people. And that's why your book is it's short, it's easy to read. Your crash course is so very helpful. And
Thank
Kirt, I know you didn't set out to do this, but there are two specific communities that have really, really embraced this book and all of your books, and that is the autism community and other areas, maybe with special ed, with some kind of a label, because these things are not natural to some children who may have this label. And so could you tell us a little bit more about that, about how these communities have really, as I said before, embraced your book?
Sure. That, like you said, I wrote this book for all young people, and you're right, young adults also. But I noticed on my website the people that were purchasing it were special education directors and transition directors. And Temple Grandin, the leading autism advocate, called me one day to endorse my book, and she urged me to use her testimonial to get the book to all teens to lower the unemployment rate. And
Mhm.
I've asked special education directors, why do you like my book? And they said, well, it's great for short attention spans and for the kids in transition with disabilities. They don't, this is not natural to them, any of these social skills. So with the pictures and the captions, it's quick and easy. And frankly, they'll tell me it's all the skills they need to get and keep a job, because the
Exactly.
unemployment rate for that population is up to 90%.
Yeah, it's definitely needed. And when you mentioned about you were looking at who was buying your book, they weren't just buying one book. They were buying books for their staff. They were buying multiple copies, correct?
Exactly. Classroom packs, they'd buy the teaching guide, the parents guide. So they would buy a book for each one of the students. And then they'd have the teaching guide, which makes it really easy for the students to learn and to teach the skills in the book. Exactly.
Right. It's such a powerful tool. And
Thank you.
Kirt, one of the things that I really value in your book, and this is how I was raised, was the concept of do unto others as you would like to be done to you, treating others with the same respect. And you talk about this in your book. Tell us, why is this so important for teens, and why did you choose to include it?
Well, following that golden rule, like you said, treating others how you want to be treated. I noticed before I wrote this book that a lot of teenagers were on their phone. They weren't treating their friends as nicely as I thought they should be treated, or adults. And
Mhm.
I didn't really blame the teens. They were glued to these cell phones, but I thought, well, maybe they've never really been exposed to this. So I thought it's really important for them to put themselves in somebody else's shoes and
Mhm.
to learn how to treat people as kindly as they can, including the elderly, their parents, teachers, and their friends. The reason I included it is because they'll have such a better life
Mhm.
if they're a kind person. They'll make more friends, they'll be more successful at work, and they will just be more apt to volunteer.
Absolutely. And the whole concept, it's not about me, me, me. It's about the bigger picture, the bigger world, which takes me to the next part, the last part in your book, that you talk about being a rock star. Um, and I know you're very big into volunteering, and I've spent so much of my life volunteering and just trying to make the world a better place. Could you tell us a little bit about that section in your book, and why you chose to put it there?
Great question. I put it there because I do a lot. I used to be the executive director of a nonprofit and the development director. And I noticed that a lot of boards, which are filled with adults, the boards of these nonprofits, the people are terrified to ask for money, which is understandable. I thought if I put the volunteer section in and these young adults read this, by the time they get older and serve on nonprofit boards, they'll be anxious to go out and ask for money, which will flip the whole scenario. Maybe we cure a lot of these problems because now finally they have the money. There's plenty of money out there. So I wrote it for that. I also wrote it thinking we have millions of these young people, and to improve their social skills, volunteering is a great way to do it, to relieve their anxiety, to meet more friends, and to make them feel good about helping. And frankly, a lot of these nonprofits need these young people, they need their help. So that's why I wrote it for many reasons. I'm a member of Rotary. We do a lot of volunteering. I just think volunteering offers so many benefits, including things teens can put on their resume.
Yeah. And it's not just about, you mentioned about, being able to ask for fundraising. It's about giving of yourself. And you mentioned this, and we hadn't talked about this, but we have a higher rate now than we ever have had in the history of keeping track of all of this, of children with, I don't want to use the word disorders, but whether it's anxiety, depression, ADD, ADHD. I've done whole entire shows about this. But one of the things that we know is that when people volunteer, they give of themselves, they develop more empathy, they're giving to other people, that it helps with depression, for example. It helps you to feel better because you get those chemicals, in those neurochemicals being released. And when you help other people, and it does help you to feel better. I mean, maybe not in every single case, but generally speaking.
Well, it does. I heard a radio show once of a gentleman that wrote a book on happiness, and the host asked him, "What's the thing that makes people happiest?" And he said, "You have to drag them kicking and screaming to do it, but volunteering is what makes people happiest." So I thought that was kind of a funny little antidote there, and it really does. It releases the endorphins. You get dopamine. You just feel so good helping others, and I think it's
Right.
important for kids to learn that.
I agree with you 100%. And just think, if every child in this world grew up believing that and practicing it, that what a better place the world would be to live in, hopefully.
Exactly.
And speaking of other people, Kirt, we have two questions from our viewers. And
Good.
when we come back from our break, I'm going to ask you those questions on behalf of those two people.
Excellent.
We'll we'll be right back. This is the part of the show where we try to answer your questions from our viewers. And in keeping with the navigation theme of parenting GPS, I like to call this your parenting destination. And Kirt, we have two questions today. We actually had a few more, but some of them we already covered. And the first question, you're going to laugh, is from me. And this is the question that I have for you. When my boys were in middle school, I bought them the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens by Sean Covey. And I ended up teaching classes to groups of eighth graders at the time about the book. It was wonderful and I loved it. And there's so much similarity in your book and in that book. And I would like to ask you to share with our viewers, what is the correlation of those two books? How does your book complement this book? What would you like to say to that?
That's one of my favorite books, by the way. I love it. I've got it. It complements it perfectly. In fact, on Amazon, it's funny because often if you go to my page, they'll suggest after they buy my book that they buy the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. It'll be right there. They're totally different books. As you know, the 7 Habits is a wonderful book, very thick, filled with information, and talks about like drug use and bullying and everything, dressing and hygiene and everything that a teen needs. But it doesn't really cover careers or social skills in depth. So they're a perfect companion set. That's, like I said, it's one of my favorite books. I think every teen should read it. My book is different in the fact that it's very thin, quick, and easy to read, and it covers what the 7 Habits doesn't really, which is the career skills, specific career skills, and specific social skills, and also some volunteering. I think Seven Habits does some volunteering, but mine is more honed on the social skills and the career skills. His is more on the life skills, and they're both, I mean, they're both so important. I love his book.
Yeah, we need them all, and I
Exactly.
would love to encourage people, to utilize both of them and incorporate both of them with, with your children. That's great. Thank you. And our
You're
second
welcome.
question is from Maria in Oakland, and Maria would like to know, is your book available in any other languages other than English?
It's available in Chinese. I sold the rights to a Chinese distributor, and that's the language it is. I'd love to have it available in Spanish, but it got so expensive to try and translate it. I haven't done that yet. But thank you,
Right.
Maria.
Yes, and Maria, and anybody else out there listening, I would like to encourage you, if you would like the book in another language, and it's not Chinese because that's the only other language, find a high school student, another teen who speaks English and whatever the other language is, and have them work with your child or your group of children or your class. And have them, maybe just not every word of the book, but at least some of the highlights, so that all of the kids can understand and benefit from your work. Kirt,
That's
we
great.
are almost out of time, and this has been such a joy to have this opportunity to share your work with our viewers. May
Thank
I
you.
ask you to please let everyone know, where can they find you online? Where can they find your book, and any other information, social media, any other information that you'd like them to know?
Sure. They can find my book on my website, www.smilethebook.com, or on Amazon. If they just start typing Smile and Succeed for teens, it'll come right up. And that's where the Kindle version, the audio version, the print on my website is for the print book and the online course and the
Excellent.
teaching guides and parents guides. And you can find the guide, parents and teaching guides on Amazon also. But thank you so much, Kari.
Absolutely. And anything for social media
On
that you'd like
LinkedIn,
to?
if they type in Kirt Manecke, Kirt, and then my last name, which is on the cover of the book, please connect with me on LinkedIn. If you go to my website, smilethebook.com, you'll see my Facebook page for the teen book also there.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing those resources.
You're
And
welcome.
so I'd like to end our show today with a quote from you, from your book. And Kirt, this is on page 116, if anybody's interested. And it's so simple, but it's so powerful. You said, "A smile will set you on a path that leads to a successful, purposeful, and fulfilling life. Always remember, smiles can be magical." And that's true. Kirt, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome, Kari. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for viewing.
Take care. Thanks.